What was the survival tip that will save your life that actually saved your life? Story 1. If you are sick, injured, or just gone through a medical event, if you get that feeling of impending doom or something just doesn't feel right, do not ignore it. I had this happen to me after I just had my second baby. I was brushed off by the nurses, but the doom feeling didn't go away and I could feel myself bleeding too much. I physically felt weaker and cold. I looked at my husband and told him I was going to die. I ended up coding shortly after because I had severe postpartum hemorrhaging that they missed. They brought me back, but I had to undergo several blood transfusions, be put on medicine for the bleeding, and have the bleeding clots past closely monitored. Answer. As someone in nursing, that infuriates me you were brushed off. That sense of impending doom would have had me grabbing the crash cart and messaging the doc to be bedside immediately. I do not fudge with a sense of impending doom. While too many new nurses have the arrogance of textbook knowledge, yet don't listen to their patients. Edit. Goddamn autocorrect. Story 2. Someone else's life. I'm glad those Heimlich maneuver posters are everywhere. I was having lunch on a Monday in a neighborhood that's mostly residential, so it was just me and one other person at another table. He choked on a piece of carrot, and I successfully did the Heimlich on him. I have zero other emergency preparedness skills, but I'm glad I had that one that day. Answer. This is a really good skill to have if you have children. I'd say essential. I've seen 3 kids choke on food over my life, and each saved by the Heimlich maneuver. My little brother twice, saved by my mother one time, our babysitter another. Most recently, my own son. He was choking on an apple peel and his lips were just starting to darken when I managed to dislodge it. The single most dramatic moment of my life, and I'm proud and extremely grateful that I knew what to do. Story 3. Drowning. I saved my son from drowning in a pool. He had swallowed so much water that he couldn't breathe. I put him on his back, rolled him to his side, and hit him on the back. He ended up throwing up numerous times. His first words to me were, "Thanks for saving me, Dad." I still get choked up 15 years later. Story 4. Used to work in the fire service. Maybe not a glamorous tip, but a lot of people were saved by bystanders knowing basic first aid and CPR. In a rural place where we're arriving to a scene 30 minutes after the stopped breathing. 30 minutes without new oxygen or circulation makes massive difference in survival odds. And for traumatic injuries, making an attempt to manage blood loss is always better than nothing. Answer. Question for you. I've been CPR certified twice, and each time I took the course I did well. It was intuitive, and I passed. But within about a year or so, I completely forgot everything about it. So a few years later, when I went to get recertified, again I did well and passed, although I had to completely relearn everything. Nothing seemed familiar from the first time. It's been a few years now, and I again completely forgot everything. If it's not something someone does regularly, obviously they're bound to forget everything, and I don't want to be in a situation where they depend on me for their survival, and I'm racking my brain trying to remember something I learned and forgot years ago. Because I actually did remember one thing, and that was, if you screw up, you could break ribs or even cause more damage. Is there anything you could recommend so we don't forget? Or do we just need to retake the class every couple years to get recertified? Story 5. Always let someone know where you're going. Many hikers, travelers, or solo drivers were rescued because someone knew their route and raised the alarm when they didn't return. Answer. This one nearly got me eliminated in a really bad spot as a teenager. Was camping with my dad deep in the Rocky Mountains. He was out for something I didn't want to do, so I decided I'm going to climb that mountain. It's short. Went up 14 miles, then leveled off. Just another 14-mile up. Same thing. Then it finally settled into a steady general slope. Finally, after 2 to 3 miles, I turned around, realizing it was too far to find the top. About a mile later, I see a road. I never crossed a road. The way I thought might have been back led deeper into the mountains. Finally, I turned around and kept walking, hoping that I wasn't helplessly lost. Stumbled across a cabin that was fortunately occupied and got directions. I was 1.5 miles off the direction I came from. Dad had no idea where I went or even that I had left. If I hadn't found that road and cabin, I could have been permanently lost and not found my way out. Total mystery when my dad got back. Where's my kid? Story 6. Woke up around 1 a.m. and went to use the bathroom. Started sweating profusely from what felt like every pore in my body. Then started feeling like I had to throw up. Individually, they were concerning. Together, they were not good. Woke my wife up and said I need to go to the ER like right now. Got there, told them what was going on, and sent straight into a room. Wife was let in a few minutes later, and we were told I was in the midst of a heart attack. Asked my cardiologist a few days later what would have happened if I had just tried to sleep it off and see how I felt in the morning. He said you wouldn't have woke up. Don't ignore the signs, folks. Answer. Oh, interesting. I once got the sudden sweats overheated feeling. I called my GP, who immediately scheduled me in, and they ran several tests. Everything came up fine, and I was sent home, told to call again if anything changed. Nothing happened afterwards. I often wondered afterwards about the strong response of my GP. Only learn now that sudden sweats is a possible symptom of a heart attack. That's both good to know and also should be more generally known because it's definitely the kind of symptom I would normally ignore. At the time, I was on new medication, which made me a bit more health paranoid. Story 7. Saved my mother's life. Go learn the Heimlich maneuver. You don't need to be fully trained, but it is definitely better if you are. But at the very least, make sure you understand every part of how it works, because panic will set in the moment. She started choking on a piece of steak at a restaurant, fully blocked airway. I did the Heimlich and got it out while cracking a rib in the process. That shoot terrifying through and through, especially on family. Edit. That don't need to be fully trained is worded badly. When I say you don't need to be fully trained, I mean, if you aren't going to do a CPR class, at least make sure you have looked up a proper YouTube video on the subjects. It's not something you can really do in the moment, and you might save someone's life. Story 8. Start doing the survival skills before you're in a survival situation. Have been in several situations where things started turning bad, and it is critically important that you do things like keep dry, stay warm enough, not get too far out, etc. before it becomes life-saving to do so. Story 9. Self-Heimlich. I choked on food while driving in a busy street. Didn't breathe for over a minute because it was standstill traffic and I was in the middle lane. Ended up cutting people off at the slightest sight of room. Put my car in the ditch. And 8th grade home EC came to mind as I Heimliched myself on the spoiler of my car. Cracked a rip, spit the food out and cried for 10 mins because my vision started to go black. Answer. I will note this advice from an actual paramedic who taught my CPR first aid class. Self-Heimlich should be the last resort. If you can get help, get help. In your example of driving in standstill traffic in the middle lane, put on your hazard signals. Put the car in park. Exit the car. Hail down someone in one of the other cars to come help you. Or if you're home alone, call 911 immediately, or the emergency number for your country, and open your front door. That way, emergency services is on their way and can access you. Then you can give self-Heimlich a shot. Story 10. Let someone know where you're going and when you plan to return. Always remain calm. I got lost on a snowy moorland once. I was alone, hadn't told anyone where I was going, had no phone signal, and the afternoon was starting to draw in. I knew which direction to go in, but I was worried it'd go dark before I got to civilization. In a panic, I started running, trying to navigate rough and snowy terrain. Thankfully, something clicked and I just stopped for a second, gathered my senses, and continued to plod on at a sensible speed. I'm still here, more wise, able to tell the tale. Answer: staying calm is so important. I was stuck in the Boundary Waters on a rental kayak that was way too old to be in regular use. I started panicking and was just about to get out of the kayak to try to swim to a nearby island when I realized that this was the worst idea I ever had, and it didn't matter that I was a strong swimmer. This was dumb as shoot. I called for help. I was in the early stages of hypothermia when they picked me up. The kayak was about to capsize. I would probably have died if I had gotten out of it and into the water with no one knowing where I was. Story 11. Not really a survival tip, but do not swerve for deer in the road. I was coming home from college late one Friday, like 1 a.m., on a road bordering a state park. As I'm tooling along, a deer jumps out in front of me. I hit the brakes, but still hit the deer, which goes tumbling off into the dark. I limp up to the next point I could pull off and look. No real damage, just a dent in the hood and some blood. Come Sunday, I'm heading back to school along the same route in daylight and get to the spot I hit the deer and realize that the road is running along a ridge line with slopes going down about 75 feet on each side. So if I had swerved for the deer and gone off the road, there's a non-zero chance I'd have been down that bank and invisible from the road if I was incapacitated. Moral of the story: don't swerve for deer animals that weigh less than your car. Answer: on a snowy winter day, a deer suddenly wants to cross the road. I try to steer around it. It changes its mind, turns around, and runs into my new path. I hit the deer and get stuck in the snow as well. Had I stayed the course, I would have been home 5 hours earlier and avoided breaking a headlight. Next time, I'll be braking, within reason, but staying on the road. Story 12. Buddy of mine was put into a coma when he was in the chicken lane trying to turn left. Had his wheels already turned in anticipation for his window when a car slammed into his rear end, lunging his car forward and turned into oncoming traffic, resulting in a head-on collision with a car going 45 mph. I took his trial as a cautionary tale and always kept my wheels straight when waiting for my turn in a chicken lane. Couple of years ago, I got rear-ended in the exact same manner as he did, but I was able to come to a safe stop in the same lane just a few yards forward and didn't have a collision. His near-passing experience saved my life, and I still think about him every time I'm waiting to turn. Story 13. Give up everything without hesitation was the lesson when I was robbed at gunpoint. As the robber turned, he fired the pistol out of panic. Could have been at me. Answer: I had my purse snatched once. I did not fight back, just let go. I was doing everything right. I was in a generally safe, populated area and was paying attention to what was going on around me. I've had so many people tell me I should have hung on to my purse tighter, or must not have been aware of my surroundings. I would not have won a tug-of-war over my purse against two men, and me being aware that there were two normal-looking men walking down the street near me didn't magically stop them from robbing me. The cops caught up with them half a mile down the road. One of them had a knife, the other a gun. Who knows what would have happened if I tried to fight or run? Story 14. My Guido, grandfather, was a jovial man. He was short, a Ukrainian-Canadian immigrant, a WPDAS RCAF vet, bald since he was 30 with a comb-over, and a retired railroad man who grew vegetables and roses. Nothing really bothered him. But we were getting ice cream when I was 12, and I was an overgrown kid. But some guy in his 30s tried to flirt with me and squeeze my butt. My Guido, who was shorter than me with a grandpa gut, squared up on this tall, muscular man and growled out a threat I don't remember because he jumped and backed up when the guy touched me. But something about that silent, Generation Cold fury made this dude beat retreat. He turned back to me, gently took my hand, and we went back to the ice cream window and ordered. I could feel the heat leaving his body. I didn't even feel that upset. The guy had touched me and scared me a bit, but I never felt unsafe because I had always felt protected because I was with him. He had always been there to catch my falls and pull me back from danger. I told him that, but he said, "I won't always be there. You're going to go to high school and university and go off with your friends, and sometimes you'll end up alone. What you have to do is be scarier than them. I learned that in the war. If we ever came across a Jerry and the boys, we were supposed to act crazy like rabid dogs and start shooting. The bullets don't scare them, but you put the two together and they panic, and you can get them in the back. When I was 20, before cell phones, I was walking home alone, 3 beers and some magic mushrooms deep. Guido had been dead a year after a massive stroke, but a man following me had just made it on my radar, so I turned right. He followed me. I turned right again. He followed me, and I remembered Guido telling me if I saw Jerry. So I turned around and started howling like a trapped dog, just screaming and a-wooing and thrashing in the air. He stopped. I screamed, "Fudge you son of a meanie fuck!" I flailed some more. I acted like a feral werewolf in a movie. I knew it was partly the mushrooms and beer uninhibiting me, and Guido's rage in my veins. And the guy turned around and started walking, then jogging as I screamed and spat. When I was sure he was gone, I ran home in my heels. If you see Jerry, answer. I'll never forget a story I heard on an episode of a podcast I listened to about how someone had broken into their house while they were asleep. They went out in the hallway after they heard a noise, and down the hall they could see a man. They instinctively started acting feral, like you described. Freaked the intruder out so much he bolted. That's always stuck with me and my plan if I ever need it, just like in your story. Story 15. Stay calm. One time, I stupidly decided to go for a hike later in the day and ended up breaking my phone. No flashlight. It got pitch black in the forest really fast, and I got completely lost off the trail. I felt myself starting to panic, so I sat down for a few minutes, collected myself, and finally ended, back on the main trail and back to my car. If I had panicked, I'd probably would have spent all my energy hiking in the wrong direction and broken an ankle in my madness. The main thing in any emergency is to do everything you can to keep yourself calm. Story 16. If you think something isn't normal in your body, listen to it. Your body will tell you if something isn't right. Literally saved my life from a major brain stroke. Started having the worst headache of my life, except it wasn't like the rest. So I got up somehow and managed to get my dad in time. Send today. Now I can continue to live Judy because I listened to my body when it told me something. Answer. My third and youngest, almost 10-yo kid, somehow seemed to seriously hurt his ankle while laying on the couch recovering from a tonsillectomy adenectomy. We had no idea how it happened, but he complained about it far more than his throat. Even my nurse sister looked at it and couldn't see anything outwardly wrong. Since it was still weird, I made an appointment with our GP. The next day, I couldn't get him up to go to the car. He collapsed the second we had him up, so I called 911. Turns out his classmate had had strep A and exposed him at school the day before his surgery, and the strep Decided to do a full-body tour 2024 inside my kid, and decided his left ankle joint neighboring, thankfully minor, growth plate was the place to drop anchor. The docs told us I wouldn't have been able to rouse him the next morning. He was so close to dying of sepsis. The ID doc said his CRP, I think is what it was called, basically the level of infection in his blood. Repressed trauma makes things a little fuzzy sometimes, was the highest he'd seen in his 20-year career. And then, after 24 hours on the craziest doses of amoxicillin I've ever seen, his CRP was still the second highest ever. He was in the hospital for 10 days, having several surgical procedures to clean up the infection. In addition to damaging the joint and bones on both sides of it, it completely dissolved one of his open growth plates. The ortho's description, fucking barf. I dislike medical shoot. He was in a wheelchair for months, and the first 3 weeks home I was in charge of dosing him every 8 hours with 13 75 milliliters of amoxicillin. 8 a.m., 4 p.m., 12 a.m., no exceptions, 3 weeks straight. After his left ankle finally healed, he had his last surgery at the beginning of March 2025, which was actually surgery on both ankles. The fairly simple removal of 2 pins that had served as the scaffolding of new bone growth from his left, and the total removal of the matching healthy growth plate from his right. It was the least painful of our options to make sure he didn't walk like the penguin, in his own words. He might not hit the final height he would have been had he not gotten sick, but since the damaged and removed growth plates were only responsible for approx 20 of total adult height, he might lose 1-2 inches total. His dad is 6, and older bro is 6'2", so he should still hit at least 5'10", according to the ortho. This went from early Oct 24, late April 2025, and I'm just now starting to process shoot. Had to put my mom face on and just do what needed to be done until it was over. And now that it's over, whew. TLDR, what they said, if shoot is weird, get it checked out. Story 17. Not quite life-saving, but it sure felt like it at the time. I didn't realize I had heat exhaustion and got on a roller coaster. When my vision started going gray at the edges, I remembered the Mythbusters Blue Angels episode, where they talk about the full-body muscle clench thing they have pilots do to counteract the G-forces pulling blood away from your brain. I did those clenches for the rest of the ride and managed to avoid passing out, got off the ride and toddled off to a sheltered area to drink some water and cool off. Lessons about my heat tolerance were learned that day, but the pre-existing lesson about hook maneuvers meant I got to learn them while conscious and in private, instead of from an impatient EMT after they revived me. Answer: my dad got full-blown heat stroke a couple years ago while living in one of the hottest parts of the world. Outside temperature was around 50 C. It permanently damaged his gums. Shortly after, several of his teeth fell out. He developed severe gum diseases, and his salivary glands were damaged, so he now has permanent dry mouth. The teeth that remained are all messed up. I knew heat stroke was a medical emergency, but I didn't realize how badly it messes you up for a long time after. Don't get heat stroke. Story 18. My stepdad thought he was having a heart attack and chewed an aspirin. Turns out he was right, and the doctor said it likely was the reason he lived. Story 19. The most dangerous thing I usually do is drive. These tips are about 63 of my driving knowledge, and I do pretty good. Don't pass if it's a double yellow, but especially don't pass another car going over a hill or around a curve. Look before you change lanes. If your car engine is overheating, turn the heat on full blast. Maybe just older cars saved my jerk in a traffic jam outside Nashville, coming back from spring break in '01. Assume every container in the road is filled with nails, as in try not to run it over. Brake, don't swerve. Unless you need to swerve, then do what you got to do. Answer: I've got one for when there aren't hazards, and everyday tip for every second you're driving. Don't look at the road right in front of you. Look at the road 500,000 feet ahead of you. Anticipate incidents, obstacles. Don't react to them. Also, coast up to stop signs and traffic lights. Your foot should almost never go directly from the gas to the brake. Story 20. I don't know if this actually saved my life, but somebody hit me on the highway while I was driving with cruise control on a 70-hour highway, hit on my left passenger side, and my car spun out across 2 lanes of traffic and spun in full 2 circles, I believe. The entire time it was happening, I stared right at my steering wheel with my dad's voice in my head saying, "Ease into the turn. Do not overcorrect or try to go the other way." So, with my passing grip on the steering wheel, I slowly went with the motion of the car, and we didn't flip over or anything. It was terrifying. I remember, at some point, seeing my dog in midair in the back seat. She had a seatbelt leash, thank God. Totaled my vehicle, yet the man who hit me somehow was able to somehow stay on the road and got away with it. Story 21. Saw a news article about what 3 words and thought it sounded really useful, so told my kids to make sure they had the app on their phones in case they ever needed me to pick them up and they didn't know where they were. Fell over and broke my ankle and had to use it to help the ambulance located me. Rang my daughter to let her know what was going on, and the first thing she said was, "What's your 3 words?" Not exactly saved my life, but certainly saved time when I was sat in the snow waiting for help. Answer: I was once climbing in a big quarry on a coastline. Somebody fell, and due to their